Greetings, everybody. This is Christopher Messina coming at you as ever from the beautiful beaches of the last free state in America, Florida. Joining me from across the peninsula on the slightly less beautiful beaches of the Gulf side of Florida is Joshua Potter, the CEO of Kalashnikov USA, who's had an interesting career in the military prior to entering and joining us here in the private sector. And we're going to have a rambunctious conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time.
No, hey, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. And Chris, and just for those who are listening to us for the first time, Chris and I have known each other for a few years, and we've liked each other for the entire time, which for me that's pretty much a rarity. But yeah, we say that I retired out of Special Operations Command over in Tampa, Florida, so we consider ourselves the left coast of Florida. But don't let that fool you. We actually do, appreciate
Left is relative
love
in
all
Florida.
of God's children, even those they were misguided.
Exactly. And the only slight difference is our gators are a little bigger. But aside from that,
yeah, and do have gators in our pool, and every once in a while you'll find snakes in your pool too, and that is never a fun thing.
Yeah, no, I had a marvelous moment the other day out of my dock where I was fishing. It's getting dark, and just like it's the irritation, of course, everyone who does any fishing whatsoever is like, you can see the damn fish and it's looking at you, and you're like, is this the right bait? And as the fish is deciding whether he likes my bait, this gator starts coming drawn to my bobber. So I'm like, the gators are going to screw this up. But the best part was before I could do anything about it, dolphin came out of nowhere, screaming through the water, scared the shit out of the gator who took off. My fish was gone. It was a tough day. But
well, I know that dolphins
there are worse things than having
sharks. I know that dolphins attack sharks on occasion,
yes.
But I never knew that a dolphin would attack a gator.
I don't think he wasn't. I think he was just fishing, so he was coming through, and the same dolphin comes through kind of every evening around the same time. And they're very smart. One of the funniest moments I had with that dolphin a few weeks ago was I was just sitting out there and came around, was catching fish, doing whatever dolphins do, and then I swear stopped at the dock, popped his head out of the water, looked at me for like 5 seconds, and then took off. It was a marvelous moment. So
that is pretty cool.
We here in Florida get to enjoy things the rest of the country just misses out on.
It's like, this is the land of, drinking beer from a can and still watching NASCAR and appreciating it,
Amen.
Not a problem.
Amen. So let's kick off with your current gig. What's the aside from being arguably one of the most fun jobs of anyone I know, being the CEO of Kalashnikov, how'd you get into it? And what's the big stuff that's happening that you can talk about?
Yeah, sure. Well, I got into, I've always been into firearms. I think ever since, I grew up in Oregon, where we don't have a military base anywhere in the state, really. And we also don't have any sports teams we're worth a damn, except for the Trailblazers, and most of them have always been in prison. So,
which is a pre-qualification for tryouts, I understand.
That is. But I grew up in a real small area in coastal Oregon, right in the kind of the middle of the state. And we used to go duck hunting and stuff before school. We'd have gun racks and our ducks in a cooler, and we would sit there and pick the ducks clean during lunch, in school. And nobody ever bothered our stuff. We never had any school shootings or anything else like that, because you never knew who else was kind of there. And it was that was just kind of how we grew up. We grew up country boys. All my friends were loggers and fishermen and farmers. So I've always been a big avid hunter and sports fanatic. Never a big fisherman, but hunting was always a big part of my life. And something my dad always taught me how to respect. And he taught me how to go shooting and stuff when I was a young kid, probably 10 years old, and I was shooting competitively with pistols and stuff. And I always followed that through. And then I got into the military. I went to West Point right after high school, which really pissed my mom off. She's definitely that left side of, she engages that part of her I won't say rationale because there's not much rationale behind it or reasonableness, but she does engage in with that, that sect of crazy, being the liberal retards. And anyway, but my dad was a very right-wing conservative Republican type of thing, and I think the sex between the two of them must have been absolutely mind-boggling because they didn't agree on a whole hell of a lot else.
It's a traditional marriage structure.
Yeah, but they were both, both very, very bright people. My dad was a doctor, mom was a nurse, so they always had things to talk about at dinner, which a lot of things were done post-mortem around our dinner table. And our family kind of split that way. We were very much bifurcated. There were those who were team dad and some who were team mom. I won. I was with dad's side. And anyway,
what was West Point? You liked it? Was it as?
I hated West Point. I thought that it was the absolute worst place I could have possibly been. It was nothing but a haze, and I was terrified all the time. But it was because I didn't know anything. And if it hadn't been for people who were prior service, kind of picking me up and looking me after me and taking me under their wing, I would never have made it through that place. But I was absolutely miserable. But I made it through, by the grace of God, and I think the humor of the United States government. And when we got into things, and I got into become a second lieutenant in the United States Army, and I spent 27 years in the military, and we wound up going through, I think it was 16 different houses, in 8 different states, and half a dozen different places around, and hell, 47 countries during that time frame. And most of it, the end of it was all, I went into special forces, and I guess it was 1997 is when I started my career in special forces, going through the assessment stuff, and put my Green Beret on in 99. And I just kind of never looked back that much. And I finally retired in about 2020. So it was a lot of fun, very engaging. And working with that community, I was just, stunned by what I was able to get away with, really. And when I was getting, things ready to retire here in Tampa, Florida, I retired out of Special Operations Command as a director over there. And I worked on everything from transnational organized crime to counter-narco-terrorism and counter-threat finance. So I got to really do all sorts of really neat, fun things. And then,
I'm jealous of you, of the current crop of guys who get to push the button on the Venezuelan drug boats.
Honestly, they don't have any. They don't have a soul. I mean, I was just. I had fun because I was still able to kick indoors when you're a lieutenant colonel or a colonel, doing stuff. So that's kind of the beauty of being in special operations is you're able to still do things that are hardcore, kinetic, and matter. And that to me, I've always taken that.
Such a self-selecting community, right?
It really is. And they do really. They say, hey, that only 1/2 of 1% ever served in the military, and to be honest with you, an itty bitty tiny friction of a fraction of people get to are qualified to be a Green Beret, let alone actually put one on. And that's not saying anything disparaging about Rangers or the guys who are other elements of the special operations community. It's just a different community, and it's a different.
I'm curious about your thoughts on this because I do a lot of work with the combat controllers, right? So I know that community very well and that selection process very well. And what I have found is do you get a good sense of coming into the qualification pipeline who's going to make it successfully out the other end, or are you kind of surprised by who tapped out, who made it?
No, I was surprised a lot, often, because first off, I'm a terrible judge of character. I think, I swear to God, I am. I'm like the worst judge of character. But
which is why we've gotten along so well for so long.
Probably, yeah, that makes sense. There you go. But no, I was a terrible judge of character because I was always like, oh, that guy's going to quit, or that guy's going to fail, and blah blah. And I realized you know what? the 3 key words when you go into special operations, don't you quit. And as long as you don't quit, then chances are very good. If you are tactically sound and you're physically capable of doing things and you don't look like a jerk doing it, then you'll make it through. And that's kind of how I went through things. Is I just never quit. I broke both my feet. I had stretch fractures in both my feet in school. And the guys kind of looked at me and they go, well, are you done now? And I go, no, it kind of sucks. I'd like some Motrin, maybe some coffee. But other than that, let's go. Yeah, it really hurts. But
is that the common denominator you saw among those who made it?
Yeah, just don't quit. Yes, that was a key thing. And the people who were able to not try to be the guy with a better story. There was a lot of people who come in, thumping their chest and saying, "Oh, I'm a big Billy badass." And I went through one person who happened to be in Mogadishu back in '93 when Black Hawk Down. That whole those shenanigans were going on, and I actually went to the Q course with one of those guys who was in one of those units. In one of the Ranger units. And I'm sorry, he wasn't one of the Ranger units, but he was in one of those units. And we went to the qualification course together. And God, that guy had some amazing stories. And everybody hated it because of that. Right. Now, fortunately, he actually did tone things down later on. And he was a really good guy. So he might have been the exception to that rule of don't try to be the guy with a better story. And that was just because he really did have some really impressive stories about things that he saw, but it was never self-aggrandizing for him. It was always the people around me did this.
And that would be the difference, whether it's something to puff yourself up or whether, hey, I was there for this.
Yeah, it was just nuts. Hey, I've seen some horrible things. Yeah, it sounds like that's pretty serious. And and it helped guys like me who hadn't seen those horrible things, get to be friends with it.
Yeah. And as your career progresses, I'm always fascinated by the as people have described it to me, that their career arc, where in the beginning of your career in the military, you're taking orders and you're going where you're told, but later on you are the one giving the orders. How important is it for effective leadership to have experienced effective leadership or having experienced ineffective leadership in prior engagements? How does that shape how the best, you go about what you do?
The best way I would describe that progression would be the people who succeed or that achieve the most, whether you call it success or not is up to you, it depends on your metric. But the people who I would think that really do achieve the most are the people who are what I would call servant leaders. The people who they never say, "Hey, you work for me."
Right.
It's the people who are truly embrace that the mentality of I work for you. And I always hated the people who said, "Hey, I'm a subject matter expert in this. I know everything there is to know about something." Oh shit, that means to me you've stopped learning. I'm not a subject matter, and just for the I'm not a subject matter expert in anything. I've mastered some of the basics in stuff, but I'm not an expert in anything. And it's not because I'm taking a page out of false humility or being humble. I'm not a humble person at all. I should be, but I'm not.
That's a good point. False humility is the word.
I want to be more humble, but I'm just not.
But there's a huge difference between competence and pointless arrogance, right? And competence will always lead to confidence. I was curious about this, your perceptions. Did you see marked changes in how SOCOM operated administration to administration, or was there a pretty solid continuity as to how special operations worked, irrespective of who was sitting in the White House?
Honestly, I think that the continuity across special operations as a command and as the individual teams that kind of get brought up in things is constant. And the reason why is because it's not the people who are in uniform, it's the civilians that have retired out of uniform and stayed in the community. Those were the ones that were the actual mainstays. So, and there's a lot of, hey, people don't like, dealing with a bunch of contractors until you start to get to know some of them. When I was at SOCOM, I had 54 people that were in the section that I was a chief for. 54. 52 of them were in civilian attire. 52 out of the 54. And the other two, there was a couple of folks were there as NCOs. But that was it. And I'll tell you what, that was a huge deal, because the person who I probably learned the most from was a GS-14. He was my deputy at the time. And I didn't know anything about contracting. I didn't know anything about how a 4-star headquarters really worked. And the one thing I did know was that I don't have to be the guy with the best ideas. You just got to surround yourself with people who are.
That's right. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That's true up and down, public-private sector. I remember one of my favorite bosses at Goldman when I was young. He was an insufferable, crazy man that drove everybody insane. But I didn't know that, right? So I got along with him just fine until I found out why he was crazy. But for about 9 months, there was a bit of a honeymoon period there where I was like, how do you work with him? And I looked at them like, they're crazy. Like, what do you mean? Like, he's perfectly reasonable. And I found out occasionally he could not be. But anyway, his point was, he said when he'd hired me on and I'd worked on something, and he'd asked for some basic analysis as a financial firm. And I did what I thought was a fairly exhaustive review of what we needed to know. And apparently that was 400% better than anyone else in my cohort was giving him. I didn't know that. And his joke was, he's like, see, I have this argument with my partners all the time. They want to be surrounded by people that they can tell what to do. I want to be surrounded by people smarter than me, because then I look smart. Yep. I live by that. When I find a crazy prodigy, I want to hire him or her today.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And the other thing is, education, formal education, doesn't always mean that much. One of the best analysts that I ever had that worked for us, and he was tremendous. His name's Kurt. Did not have any degree at all. He was a retired intelligence, warrant officer, military intelligence warrant officer. That guy knew absolutely everything about Hezbollah and how they were structured, who was who, how they worked their finances, everything. I asked him at one point, probably I think my second year I was over there, and I said, Kurt, do me a favor. I just want to take your brain, kind of squeeze it, and put it onto some flow charts. Show me on diagrams how you see Hezbollah as the structure and how they're, and really how they operate. And that process took probably 6 months before I got something back from him on that particular thing. It was kind of a pet project that we were working on together.
Yep.
And when I saw what he was able to accomplish after that 6 months, I mean, he had, from one side of a 30-foot room to the other side in big, huge butcher block, handwritten, notes and all this other crap. And I'm like going, okay, this is great. Can we digitize this? Because
really, can we capture
I
this?
really
off
can't
paper?
see it. And he kind of looked at me and he goes, no, because he goes, when I started over there, some of those people are now dead, and then they got replaced by so this is really more of a chronological thing and how it kind of came to me. I'm like, God, I mean, this guy was just, and he is. He's I think he's still in right now. But I
hope the Democrat Party haven't gotten a hold of that, because that would be where they choose their next candidates from off that list.
Yeah. I was like going, dear Lord. But every time that we had something really cool, fun to do, I made him go out and do things in the public sector, because I was like, I just want him to get smarter. And he would always come back and, help me figure out, why things were the way they were. And I was like, that's great. He was a great, great teacher. So you awesome. Do surround yourself with people like that. Now I think would be that definition of that servant leadership that we were talking about before.
Yeah, for sure. And and they can achieve more because they've got the resources and the environment in which they can deliver all that value.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
And to be honest with you, I had and we all do. We had good bosses. We have ungood bosses, but the best bosses. I mean, I'm still very friendly with the last guy who was the G3 when I left. The director of operations from Special Operations Command. He was my 2-star when I left. And we still talk, every week, or send funny memes back and forth to each other and do stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people that you will always go, God, I enjoyed working with this person. And it wasn't because, you're kissing somebody's ass. It was because this is somebody who actually would do something useful with the information he was given or she was given.
And that, what I find valuable about that, especially in the military, is that in the private sector, when you get senior enough, you can self-select for that, right? Like I've had a no assholes role for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I now only work with people I want to, which is delightful.
Right.
I go back to my 10th grade English teacher who said, if I suspect you of cheating, you're out of here. Like, I'm not about any proof, because the very fact that if I'm wondering about whether you are, and I think of him all the time. Like, if I'm debating whether you're a colossal asshole and a waste of time and a liar, if I'm thinking that, you are. Like, I no longer have.
I don't have to justify it.
Trying to get proof. I don't care. I really just don't care anymore.
I don't care why. It's just
I don't care why.
Yeah, you're a jerk.
I don't care about any of it.
I'm not here to fix you. We're not married.
No, exactly. Yeah. Good luck with fixing. But I find it helpful. I try to convey that to a lot of younger folks. We have interns, and they try to keep them away from me because I'm usually do better with a buffer between me and the juniors team. But occasionally I get trapped, and I have to be polite. And I remember years ago, I was chief operating officer of a big financial firm in London, and we hired this young kid as a broker, way overeducated, Oxford, Puckett English, pain in the ass. Nice kid, but a product of his environment, which meant he was a pain in the ass. And he came into, first of all, he walked into my office uninvited, which was odd. But anyway, I was in a good mood, so I listened to him. And he's going on and on about how, like, the kind of big general manager who run the entire London office, like, doesn't seem particularly interested in his career development. And I looked at him, I said, excuse me? He said, well, I want to achieve X, Y, and Z, and I don't think, he really cares. I said, he doesn't know you exist. He doesn't give a shit about you. I mean, do you know why you have a job here? And he looked at me. I don't think anyone would have asked him this sort of basic question about reality. So why did this firm offer you a job, and why do you get a paycheck every 2 weeks? Like, why? Right. And he starts to go on about, because I did X, Y, Z. I said, no. I know your qualifications. You work for me. Just fundamentally, why are you here? Why am I here? Why is she here? Why is anyone here? And he didn't know. I said, because if I pay you £1, you have to earn me at least 1.2 pounds. Hopefully many more pounds. That's why you're here. You're a unit of economic input. And if you fail to deliver economic value, you will no longer be employed here, much like I will not. Your personal career goals, which they talk to you about in some HR class at college, is nonsense. Nobody cares.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, nobody cares about your feelings, your beliefs.
Your dad probably doesn't.
No. It's like no. Now, let me. And the other side of that, I think, honestly, Chris, is there are some people who, in their own dynamics, they do amazingly well, but then you put them into somebody else's field or somebody else's, got some different experience, and they think they might do things exceptionally well there too, and they do not. Yep. Case in point, Tom Cruise. I love Tom Cruise movies. I've loved Tom Cruise movies since I was in high school. I mean, I swear to God, I think one of the reasons why I went to West Point was because I went to Top Gun in 1986 and I saw that movie and I came out
Really?
and I asked my dad, I said, Dad, they were talking about the Academy. What's the Academy? Puts his arm around me, says, "Oh, son, come and talk to me." And, but, but Tom
That's
Cruise
great.
is a tremendous actor, phenomenal guy. Great. I mean, he's a fun, dynamic person like that. But there are some areas where I certainly don't want Tom Cruise to tell me about how to live my life because we will not see
Exactly.
things the same.
One of the best things I ever saw. So you know that it's Top Gear. It was an English show first, that they made an
Oh yeah,
American
yeah. I
knockoff.
know
But the
Top Gun.
original English one, Top Gear, talking about cars, very funny, and it's very effective in the way that only the English can do it. Like I don't particularly love the American version. Anyway, point is, they had Mark Wahlberg was on the English show, so they had this bit where they get a famous person to drive a mid-range sedan as fast as they can around a track. Hilarious bit, right? So everyone comes and does it, and they time you, and but it's like a beater, like a 1999
Yeah, it's like a
Datsun, right?
1984, Chrysler
Yeah,
Cordoba.
like
You're
a
like, what
piece
the
of
hell?
crap.
Yeah,
And so that's the shtick. It's like how far fast can you push this utterly non-performance family sedan?
yeah.
So he does the race, and he's sitting in the studio audience, and one of the movies that Tom Cruise had done, which was a racing movie. Anyway, it was around that time. The point was,
Days of
Jeremy, the
Thunder,
host,
probably.
yeah, whatever it was, and
Whatever.
Jeremy said to Mark Wahlberg, "Oh, we had Tom Cruise on the show, and he performed X, Y, or Z, and he said his favorite car is X. But basically, like, do you know him? Do you work with him? Whatever." And Mark's comment was, "We go to different churches." That was phenomenal. One of the best things I have ever heard anybody say. It was delivered deadpan, and this was at the height of Scientology suing the living shit out of anybody who said anything
Yeah,
bad about them, right? We go to different churches. It was magic.
that's brilliant. Absolutely
It was
brilliant.
absolute magic. But so I'm curious. So
Mhm.
a lot of stuff to dive in on SOCOM, but right now, especially with the refreshed fireworks and the diminishment of the arsenal under the Biden administration, what's it like now in Kalashnikov in the current environment? Is that is how much the big chunk of military works, a lot of foreign work? Is it all domestic sales? What's the thing that's really driving growth you guys are seeing now?
Well, what's driving growth is the economy. Meaning, and by that I don't mean not everybody gets the best product, and the best product doesn't always win. Okay, because the best products may be 3 times as expensive because the parts are the best, and the parts are going
Right.
ridiculously, or there's a whole bunch of reasons. So I would say that the number one thing that's driving growth in defense sector is absolutely the economy. We cannot have a strong military when we are worried about how our kids are being fed or anything else. The social drama that we are seeing and that was playing out was crippling. I think crippling this nation over the course of many years in the last say the last 12 years or so. And that to me was one of the reasons why when I did get out, I didn't go right into firearms. I actually went into IT. I actually went into the information technology sector for a little while because there was a natural dynamic that allowed me to do that, and I really needed to feed my family. But when the opportunity came up, and I did that for about 4 years, when the opportunity came up to go into firearms, oh my gosh, I fell in love with it. I did things for free for 3 years with
Yep.
Kalashnikov because I love the product. I've been on the receiving end of it and the delivering end of it for a long enough time, and it was interesting because, and I'm just talking about small arms, and I'm talking about some of the higher tech stuff. But when we're talking about small arms, the pivotal event occurred in the 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea, and President Obama's made a very good, smart, wise choice, I think, to say, that's it. We're not having anything to do with the Russians anymore. We tried playing nicely, and this is obviously not going to go. And he did something which, we said, not only the sanctions and stuff like that, but he put a moratorium of anybody doing work with the Russians, especially in the small arms community. And that was crippling for a lot of people who were, doing work in the defense sectors. And then it took a while for things to, kind of catch up in China, and something talk about that, I'm sure. We're still dependent largely on China for some things like controllers and chips, et cetera. But we were able to extricate ourselves from the Russians. And at that time, Kalashnikov USA was actually more of a distributor for the Russians. They worked for Kalashnikov Concern, which is the big company in Russia that makes the Kalashnikov rifles, and was distributing them across the United States. But what they had done something earlier. They did something in they bought the TDP, they bought the blueprints, and then they bought the naming rights. They bought the trademark for Kalashnikov. So that
globally, or
that
just
was something
US?
Well, they did, so that way they're the only ones that were able to say, hey, we are a Kalashnikov sanctioned. I don't say sanctioned, but a Kalashnikov, we are the brand that everybody knows around the world. And it's the number one most promulgated firearm on the planet.
It's absolutely. But do you have the naming rights for just North America, or is it the global naming rights?
No. We got them for the United States, but we sell them all around the world.
Right.
Because that's what we did, is when we bought the rights to it. It was fantastic. It was very good, smart, forward thinking by the people who were, part of KUSA, back then. So when I came onto the scene here after 2020, I was always interested in Kalashnikov USA, and it was actually, they were manufactured just down close to where you were in Pompano Beach in Florida.
Oh, right.
That's where they were being manufactured. But they never really took off because there were other things. Now, granted, they had the best AKs that were actually American made, but nobody really knew it, and they weren't. Their marketing wasn't all that awesome, to be honest with you. I don't think it was. But now we got to the point where we got them. The new owner of Kalashnikov USA, his name's Elliot, purchased them and got them out of because they were in pretty bad, dire straits financially, and he rescued them and he resurrected them. And out of the 50 people that were there, we hired about 6 of them back, and said, okay, we're going to redo this company, and we're going to have this rebranding, and we're going to do this. But I want everybody to understand this. This is an American company. It's 100% American, AK platforms, and our loyalty is to make sure that we have American citizens with the most reliable firearms on the planet here for your own protection, your own security, your own individual responsibility. That's going to build our national strength. And I loved that. I thought that was the absolute best message.
It's a clear mission.
Yeah, it was very clear, and it was very clear. And I thought that was something I can absolutely get behind. So Elliot and I sat down and started talking through some of these things, and we said, okay, how do we want to do this? I said, well, we've got this, the 250th anniversary coming up. We've got all these great things coming up. We could do all sorts of great things for branding. And he goes, not until we're ready. I want to make sure that we have everything lined up first.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay. So and we couldn't do it effectively when we had a very challenged administration in the White House. That was making life very difficult for folks. Now it's a hell of a lot easier, and it's a lot sooner.
A lot easier.
No, and the people now Elliot, he doesn't just own Kalashnikov, he also owns Bushmaster firearms. I was like, I don't know when he got the wild hair to go buy Bushmaster, but he did, because he wanted to have an AR platform too. So we got them out of some distress, and I was like, this is great. So now I have daily calls with the the president of a Bushmaster, and we talk about hey, how can we build things and do collaborations and share stuff back and forth, and it is
That's awesome.
terrific. Yeah, and
And is it a big wholesaling game? Like you're obviously going through multiple dealers throughout the country, right? I mean, is that the whole game, or is it all direct sales?
No, we haven't even started making retail sales. Haven't even started.
Huh.
Because
oh, wow.
we have just been trying to keep up with the demand on the international sectors on the government sectors.
It's still a professional bulk sale at this point.
It's unbelievable. Well, and I still have I have not sold one gun in the
well, that makes sense because outside the U.S., the AK is the toy of choice, right? So everyone knows how to use them, and so if you're providing a more reliable version of something that's already fairly reliable, then that makes a huge amount of sense.
Yeah, it's like, hey, look, I've got and I like old I don't know if you can see behind me, but I've got old antique firearms and stuff like that, like old World War II stuff and Revolutionary War stuff and all these things, and I love that stuff. They're great. But when you look in my saves, I've got I think I've got 11 Glocks, and I carry a Glock every day. That's my everyday carry. I carry a Glock pistol every day wherever I go, and I have probably nine or 10 ARs, to include a couple of Bushmasters. But I've only got one AK because I want to make sure that damn thing always is ready to roll.
Right.
I've got ARs in every caliber and every type of thing. I got short barreled ones. I got ones that are in 300 blackout. I got ones that are in 350 legend. I've got ones that are in 223. Got about 7 of them that are in 223. It's just, but
reminds me of
the AKs. One
marvelous.
I want to make sure that one never fails.
That makes sense. It's what I'm curious is just broadly is because of the way the country's evolved. I think that the relevant statistic is only 7% of Americans either have served in the military or know someone that served in the military. Right, so just 7%. That is an astonishingly low number. And, especially when you come to Florida, I think that number is like 99%.
Yeah.
But
Florida and Texas. Texas is another one where, it's just
for sure. But there's a wide cultural gap, which is very problematic for the country. And I think a lot of the sort of puerile and ill-informed temper tantrums we see on college campuses and in the streets kind of tie back to that reality. It's not an immediate segue off of AK sales, but it's been I praise on my mind, especially after October 7th in Israel and getting into lots and lots of arguments with people. Like, I don't even know where we begin untying that knot, right? The Weather Underground, most kids today don't even know who that is, right? Students for Democratic Society, communist terrorist organization, Bill Ayers, who created Barack Obama, right? All that history is hidden deliberately. And I remember a good friend of mine I worked with for years, older. He went to high school with Bill Ayers in Winnetka, Illinois, the wealthy suburb outside of Chicago. And so when he was convicted of domestic terrorism, right, and then went on the lam, the last conversation my friend had with him was him saying very deliberately, the American Communist Party is deciding to model themselves on the Jesuits in the Catholic Church, meaning if you want to change a society, you change education. Right? So Bill Ayers, his bitch wife Dorn, their horrible child chasing Buddha, all of them, they were all in education. They went into so that was their goal, and they infested Jimmy Carter's Department of Education, which he created in '79. And I will never forgive Ronald Reagan for not killing it in 1980, when killing it was a plank of his platform. But we're seeing the result of that play out with, how anyone on the morning of October 8th in this country, when they're still counting bodies in Israel and counting hostages, are marching in Times Square with pre-printed fucking signs paid for by that commie traitor Neville Roy Singham, who's now hiding in China, right? And that hasn't stopped. That has been continuous ever since. I'm just unsure, is there a cure for that? Is the cure for that mandatory national service for everyone? That doesn't always have to be in the military, but and other countries do it because they have to. But I'm wondering if we're now at the point where we have to. That, great, you graduate high school, mazel tov. You're going off to college, terrific. Guess what? You got 18 months of service. You could choose to serve in uniform. You could choose to serve picking up rocks on the highway. I don't give a shit. But maybe something that ties kids back to a sense of the exceptionalism of this country, which the liberals in academia have deliberately stripped out of it. I don't know if that comes up a lot as because with experience you've had, but it's something I ponder about a lot, and I'm curious.
I've had that thought, and to be honest with you, compulsory military service or compulsory federal civil service would not be something I would ever want to support. I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to support it. I never thought that was a good idea, but I'll tell you why. There are people who just, and it's not about, and I apologize, I know I'm starting a sentence and I'm stopping it. It's not about not sharing a sense of nationalistic fervor or anything else. What it's more about is there are some people that they're not driven that way. They don't have the skills, the talents, the attention span. They don't like to follow those types of things. And I don't want to create a society where you're forced into that type of a relationship with your government. I don't want to do that.
Fair enough.
I don't, personally.
I tend to agree. I mean, I'm just trying to think of what are the ways in which, and maybe it's just reforming education, right? So instead of having replaced history with social studies and having stripped out geography and math,
I thought the AmeriCorps,
just bringing that back.
Yeah, I thought the Peace Corps, I thought AmeriCorps, I thought those were good efforts that could bridge some of those gaps for being civic minded. That will help people understand not only the role of government, the role that people play in government, and those real strong social contracts that you have between the people and the government that is supposed to serve us. The challenge is, of course, that not everybody holds those same truths. I made the voluntary choice to leave my comfy state of Oregon when I was a kid, where I had no military experience, no military blood, no military background, and go into a profession of arms. And when my mom told her friends, my mom's left-leaning friends were all put their arms around her and go, "Oh my God, didn't he have any choices?" It's just like, is he did he get in trouble? Was he threatened with jail and he had to go to the army?
Yeah, was it just service or prison? Right.
Yeah, so I'm sure my mom lied to her and said, "Oh yeah, well he was caught drinking and stuff and whatever." But this was what
that's how West Point takes people off
that's exactly right.
Off of the parole lists. No, I tend to agree. It's more of a thought experiment because I fully agree that the strength of the U.S. is the volunteer military, right? And Milton Friedman, of course, put it so beautifully in so many ways. That right? Do you want your lawyer to be conscripted? Like all the things you look for in life. Do you want that person doing that job, and they don't want to do it? Like that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I'm just the reason I think about it is that the works progress administration, again, a lot of the stuff they tried to do in the Depression tended to make it worse. But like one of I try to look for a balanced view of evaluating sort of government programs.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found most interesting, both in talking to a lot of military veterans, and also that a lot of the sort of, not testimony, a lot of the experiences written about for like the Works Progress Administration was, I'm a kid from X, and I was stationed, 8 states over at a place I had never been, met people I'd never would have met otherwise.
Yeah.
And that increased my appreciation for this country, and also increased my ability to reflect objectively on where I'm from. And so it's more of a, how do you get, I guess, if it's beneficial, how do you get people exposed to fellow Americans outside of their comfort zone?
Yeah. But that requires a level of emotional intelligence, and that some people just don't have when they're 17, 18.
No, but how do you develop your emotional intelligence, right? By being challenged.
Well, you got to start, and you said it, I think, earlier, which was, and I'll give you the Israel as a state that does compulsory service, but they all have been, I won't, saying the word programmed has a real negative connotation, but in this case, I think it's
essentially critical. They have to.
It's because when every one of your neighbors is committed to your death and destruction and dismemberment, you might want to go ahead and make sure that everybody kind of knows that. So that kind of social programming does occur in their education system, and I think that is an area where compulsory service is quite good. And they still have that in I will say a lesser extreme in Germany, where there's compulsory service.
Switzerland is about as far from the conditions of Israel as you can get, and they also have compulsory military service, right?
Yeah,
and small nation, tight borders, makes sense.
Yeah, but I think that you have to have a level of emotional maturity to do that, because we would never want anything that is anything that looks or smacks of young, like youth, doing those types of things, because I immediately go back to the child soldiers in Africa that are just those things are just terrible.
That's horrifying.
That's not what we're talking about.
No. I was thinking of one guy. Never forget this guy, Jack Westoff. He's long in the grave. So when I was a kid, we belonged to a beach club in New York, and I remember he was one of the members there. Jack had a career in the FBI. So he was probably 60 when I was 10. But so he'd had a long career in the FBI, retired, but he had been a seaman in Pacific Theater in World War II. Right. So he had right. So he was, so that time frame, those ages, right. And he was, I remember him saying once, because they had these kids who worked in the club, like a cabana boy, like came and set the chairs up, like did whatever. And I remember Jack saying once, he's like, this kid is 19 fucking years old, and he can't remember to put the chairs in the right place or put the drops down. When I was 17, I was on a fucking carrier powering towards Yokohama. Right, getting shot at by Zeros. I just never forget that comparison. He's like, this kid is like,
we are not the same. Yeah.
I didn't volunteer for that. Mine, or maybe he did, whatever. But he, there he was, 17 on a boat in the Pacific.
Yeah. Hey, after 9/11, there was, this was one of those things that kind of came back up. Is, hey, do we have to go ahead and reinstitute the draft? Now, I think that at the time that was a different thing, but there was definitely a sense of nationalism and a fervor that resonated across the United States and around the world. Our international partners were, just like, we will, come and defend you. That was absolutely horrific what happened on 9/11.
I survived the towers, and so that kicked me into working in national security. like
Yeah, and it kicked a
immediately.
lot of people who wouldn't have had
Yep.
those types of things,
No.
or they had gotten into the National Guard in order to really help out with crisis response and disaster
Yep.
preparedness, and to learn skills and to do technical tasks and to pay for college and stuff like that.
All of a
And then
sudden they were in Afghanistan.
holy crap,
Yep.
I'm actually doing something that, and you know what? Some of the best people I ever worked with were National Guardsmen who came in and like, going, thank God we got, or reservists. I'm glad that
Right.
we got activated to go do these things. Now, at the same time, fast forward a couple of years when we had things like stop loss, which occurred. And that was because we wound up finding ourselves being kind of overstretched and overcommitted, and we couldn't meet the retention goals that we needed. That's why we had
Yeah.
things like stop loss. And that was just
How
like
did
going,
that
okay.
work? How did that functionally work on the ground?
It was very difficult. It was very difficult because you could, I mean, and I dealt with people often. I had I think it was six tours in Iraq, 11 tours total that were 6 months or longer. Like 6 in Iraq, a few in Afghanistan, Syria, whatever. But so I was dealing with people ever since 2002 is when I first got deployed over into to go into or do Iraq in round one. Actually, we did the prequel and then we did round one. But anyway, I mean that was just the formation of those organizations were tremendous. And when you hit stop loss, we saw the fracturing inside of those organizations because individuals were just they couldn't adjust. They were bitter. They were angry all the time, and they caused more problems than they were really worth. So if there was anything that ever we learned from stop loss, don't ever do that again. Reduce the requirements before you get to that point, because people who are career soldiers and professional arms types of people really don't want to be stuck next to somebody who's told you got to be here. And that goes back to our discussion on compulsory service. There's compulsory service, and then there's
the
you got to go back
to
into
morale and the damage to efficacy is so much worse that it's just you'd rather have fewer people who are focused than not.
Yeah, that was a very, very tough time to be in the military, and I was there during the before what they called the surge back in 2005, 2006. I was in Iraq and I was there for another year, a year-long tour there, and that's one of the times when I got hit. I got hit, struck with a 60 millimeter mortar. I think it was my third tour in Iraq during that time in Baghdad, and I took shrapnel in both my legs and jacked out my back. Awesome, but it didn't matter. I was on patrol the next day. But they were light wounds, thank God. Killed the guy next to me, but yeah, it was one of those things. Anyway, but during that time frame, we also had what was called the surge in 2006, and when that happened, 2006 to 2007, this is when we're bringing people in. They had people that were leaving, entire units that were leaving and going back, striker units, and going back and repositioning themselves. They had already seen their families, and then they get this notification, you got to go back to war. I was just there for a freaking year. What do you mean I got to go back?
I just got home and worked at the barbecue.
Yeah, but literally, but that happened, and they had units that went back in, and then we had people who were in those units that went back in and then died. They were killed in action, or they were maimed. And you want to talk about some horrific morale? That was it. I mean, that was the absolute low point, I think, in the in the military. And that was about 2006, 2007 when that started happening. And I mean, my wife was in Germany, and we were dealing with some of those units that were going over to Germany, and their wives and their kids were like, "What do you mean, Dad? He's got to go again. He hasn't unpacked his duffel.
Right.
He hasn't done laundry.
Just got back.
Yeah. Ouch. And some of those guys didn't come back afterwards. Yeah. They got extended for 2 to 3 months, and then they had to go back. No, just heart-wrenching.
That's agony. What do you think of Iraq now? It's funny. It's so not in the news if you're not paying attention. Is it functioning?
It is functioning. It's functioning, but Iraq was an interesting.
Like, it never occurs to me to book a flight to Baghdad.
No, and I'm probably glad. That's not a good place for a Jew. But just saying. I'll tell you.
Used to be phenomenal.
I'll tell
Not
you.
anymore.
My fourth tour over there, was when Operation Iraqi Freedom became Operation New Dawn. So that was the exfiltration. So I was there for the prequel. I was there for the infill. I was there for a few tours during the war itself, and I was there for the ramp down. And then I went back for Operation Inherent Resolve later on, which was another interesting trip. But anyway, so I know a little bit about Iraq, and when we were getting ready to pull out all of our stuff out of Iraq, I worked with the 17th Iraqi Army Division, a guy named General Ali. He's a 2-star general. We were both 42 years old at the time. I was Lieutenant Colonel. He's a 2-star general. And this guy was tremendous. Absolutely tremendous officer. Great guy. But he's the youngest, at the time at least, he was the youngest division commander in Iraqi. And we had a lot of good heart-to-hearts. And I wound up writing a book about it, that for all the American advisors that kind of went back in to talk about being an advisor and working with the Iraqis and the Afghans and et cetera. But this was one of those guys who just got it. And I remember it was the last chapters, like chapter 10 or whatever it was of this book. I had a conversation with him. I said, okay, you've had a couple of days to think about this. We've been together for about 9 months at the time. We had been and done some things together that were just tremendous. We were probably about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're sipping tea at his, in his compound. And I had just taught his son how to drive. And I said, you've had a little time to think about it. What are you going to miss most about the Americans? He said, well, it's not going to be your card playing ability because you can never bluff. And I was like, and we were literally playing cards at the time. We're playing a game called 51. And I was like going, what do you mean we don't bluff? I bluff all the time. He goes, no, they let you win because they like your money.
That's the difference.
It's not, yeah. He was like, you cannot bluff. And I realized he's absolutely right. I have no poker face, which is another reason why I don't gamble. But he said, there are going to be things that we will always miss about you. And we always want to have a good relationship with the Americans. But we have to with our cousins first. So he had to, his mindset was not focused on, what he could get out of America. His focus was on what the future held for his kids and his grandkids. They really do think in terms of that long game, much differently than a Western mindset, which is a lot more of a fast food diet than anything.
Do you keep in touch?
No, I lost touch with him, unfortunately. After I left in that particular tour, and I guess it was about 2014. So, fast forward a couple of years, because I left in 2010. 2014 is the next time that I had talked to him. And he had taken the 6th Iraqi Army Division in Mosul, and that was when ISIS was ramping up and had just taken over stuff. And he was in charge of the division that went north to Mosul to destroy ISIS and to move them out. So he was the one that got selected for that, and I haven't talked to him since.
But they got a lot.
He was one of those rare guys. He was a Shia who was married to a Sunni, and was, he really tried to do his best to walk those fine lines with regards to some of those social compacts that were very taboo for that culture.
But it seems to at least to be a slightly more functional country than Afghanistan is, after all the blood and treasure spent.
Yes,
That's my perception
absolutely
anyway.
true.
Afghanistan seems to collapse right back into the same medieval nonsense. It's like we were never there.
Yeah, yeah, they were just there. Well, who's in charge? Same people who were in charge when we got in.
Same people. Yeah.
Yeah, the funny thing,
Graveyard,
and I think I've
graveyard of
shared this.
empires.
Yeah, well, Chris, I know sure I've shared this with you, and if not, then that's bad on me. But one of the things I used to do was doing investigations on cell phones, and I would look at certain things and help people figure out who they were meeting with and what they were doing and stuff like that based off of what their cell data was from the third party vendors.
Right.
And so if you do this, and this is, for any of your listeners who are interested, here's what you do. It's called geofencing. You look at an area where, like I did, we left after the debacle of the Afghan withdrawal and retreat. We looked at the American embassy on about September, I think it was September 9th or 10th. Kind of took a snapshot, just drew a little box around it on Google Maps. You just draw a little box around it and say, okay, here's what the embassy main compound is for the American embassy in Kabul. All right. And I looked and I did a search and I said, I want to see all the cell phone MAIDs, your mobile ad identifiers. Anytime you open up Google Maps or Waze, or you get a Amazon, you check your weather. This is just a receiver. Yep. And it sends a ping up to your satellites, and it tells you exactly where you are, what time you were there. I'm not looking at who you're calling or anything like that, but it's an MAID. It's an anonymous thing. And it's like, okay, but it's unique, but anonymous. It's like, okay. So I look at that and I said, okay, now you look at that on the 10th of September before we left. And then 2.5 weeks later, so figure, the first full week of October, and you look at it again and you say, what cell numbers were still there 2 weeks after all the Americans were supposed to be out?
Yep.
Then you can find out all those people who were actually collaborating with the Americans beforehand by finding those, by just doing a comparison. And then what you can do is say, okay, I've got 241, for example, not that I've done the numbers before, 241 cell phones that are in this compound with unique identifiers. I'm going to choose a few of them and say, what's your pattern of life? I want to see everywhere that person has been, that cell phone has been, not person, the cell phone has been in the last 3 years. Pakistan, Iran, Pakistan, Iran, Pakistan, Kabul, Kabul, Kandahar. Go back forth. University of California, Berkeley. What?
That checks out.
Yeah. That's one thing. But I mean, I've got stuff that, you sit there and you go, okay, well, I can tell you who's, meeting with the people in Pittsburgh. I can show you where people are meeting with them on campuses in a meeting at the same location. And then you do a little thing like, okay, well, who are they talking to at that particular time of day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at UC Berkeley? Oh, here's where they are meeting.
That's what the NSC does all day long and drives people
crazy. Here's your Taliban member meeting with all the folks in the student union. And you're just like, you have got to be kidding. Oh, gosh. And then those people in the student union, you want to know what congressional offices they're going to? Oh, yeah, you can do that too. It's fascinating. Who's getting their stuff, one selector removed from your congressman.
Painful. Absolutely painful.
Yeah, but I can look 3 years in history and tell you all the things about different people and where they've been and favorite places to be.
Which just tells me the NSC is not nearly as good at their jobs as they should be.
Yeah. Oh, this is all unclassified stuff.
Yeah,
that's
all public.
Yeah, you can do that. I was doing that type of those investigative works. I was doing that, from a poolside, right here in Tampa. I don't have to go to a SCIF to do that.
Yep.
No need.
Privacy's outdated. Well, I'm going to let you get on with the weekend. We'll have to come back. There's more to discuss. We should probably do a firing test at the range. That should be actually a fine episode.
Hey, I've got stuff to go ahead. I've actually got a couple of shotguns I'd love to bring over and have you christen with me.
That'd be fun. That'd be a huge amount of fun. I got to tell you, it's still one of the most fun to shoot and accurate rifles I use is still a 1941 Garand M1. It is.
Yep.
What a guy. He created a phenomenal weapon. It is accurate as hell. I was impressed.
You're right.
It is insanely accurate. I had it out on the 600 meter range, one of the clubs I shoot at, and guys there is a very good instructor. And he's like, we're gonna go through it. Iron sights, none of this fancy scope bullshit. It's like
600 meters
World War II iron sights, insanely accurate. I was blown away.
Impressive. That's impressive.
All the usual personal stuff is obviously important, breathing cadence and all that, but like in terms of accuracy, it's as accurate as anything else I've shot, and it's Springfield Armory, fantastic.
Great.
Anyway, we'll do that. We'll get the shotguns out. That'll be fun.
Yep, sounds good, man.
Anything final for my listeners? Any admonishments, advice, thoughts?
The only thing that I would like to go ahead and just impart is the thing that kind of connects us, and I think that connects the folks who are a part of this podcast. To be honest with you, Chris, it's that we don't suffer from selective memory. We're a product of our own experiences, and we believe in individual responsibility and accountability. We all wind up, doing something, a little bit, strange and off the wall, but we don't try to blame anybody else for our screw ups.
That's a fine summation. You're absolutely right. The lost art of personal responsibility is arguably the tagline for this whole podcast.
I like
well
that.
Done. Well summed up, sir.
All right. God bless you. And thank you very much for having me on, Chris. I look forward to talking to you again.
You bet. And for my normal listeners, the spiel. Turn off the mainstream media who are lying to you and tune into Messy Times every time you can.